But when it comes to filtration criteria for Islamic investing, it does include a prohibition on weaponry. In substance, I don't see how any of that is actually different to conventional insurance.
In and of itself, Takaful means solidarity, working as a group. And this point about anything that is outside of the Islamic State is seen as prohibited.
In this episode, we're unpacking a century-old question. Is insurance forbidden in Islam? The answer will surprise you. The idea of shared protection, collective responsibility didn't come from Wall Street. It was alive in the earliest Islamic community from Medina to the Ottoman Empire. This conversation isn't just about money or religion. It's about how humanity moves forward. Standing on the shoulders of giants, we often forget.
They argue that the European financial and legal system seems to be translating Arabic texts into English, where this whole model of the trust in English and Welsh financial system, you can see there was a lot of borrowing from the Ottoman states because
those people articulating conventional insurance is forbidden because they haven't actually understood the conventional economic model. Arabic text being translated into European languages so that European scholars could actually understand what Islamic scholars were actually reading, or they themselves would learn Arabic to understand the Arabic text. Hey guys, welcome to the Way of Wealth podcast channel. I'm here today with my wonderful colleague, Dr. Shah Shahin.
Thank you.
Again.
Got it right.
Sorry, dude. He hasn't been with us for quite a few months since the last podcast we did together. That was a really good session. If you haven't watched that already, do watch it. There was a lot of really good insights into that. Today we are, do you know what? I don't know. We're going to talk about, the broader economy. We're going to talk about finance in general. We're going to talk about Islamic finance in part. We're also going to talk about just general conventional lending, investing, and so forth, and why this is all so important to the broader economy. All right, so Shah, just give for the sake of the audience. All right, we should give them some context. So me and Shah, we're co-authoring a couple of books. One of them, well, actually three, in fact. Although we put the first one we started on hold. One of them has been published. It's called, it's more of a report, okay? But it's like, a 70-page report. I can't even recall. It's on the website right now, adlresearch.org, and it's entitled Between Risk and Revelation. So the report has been published, and we're working on the book as well. I reckon it would actually be good if you were to give an overview on the report, okay, and what people can expect from the report, and then what people will be able to look forward to from the book.
Yeah, just to clarify a bit, we've got two reports up, right?
Yep.
One is about risk and revelation, so it's looking at insurance from an Islamic legal angle. So it looks at where insurance features within Islamic law and some of the arguments for and against insurance, conventional insurance, and some of the efforts that Muslim scholars have made towards accommodating insurance, adapting insurance for a Muslim market. The other one looks at cash endowments within Islamic Muslim communities. So that in itself explores how cash was introduced within Muslim society, specifically within the Ottoman Empire, and some of the clashes between the Islamic scholarly class and the political class, where you have politicians and economists saying that we need to get with the times and actually start accommodating cash within the treasury, and you have Muslim scholars saying that, well, we can't actually make room for cash because that opens the door to corruption as well. So it's quite interesting. With the book or the monograph that we're working on, I'm using the academic term, the monograph we're working on. Essentially, I started looking into the arguments for and against insurance within Islamic law. And then I think what I found, there's so much gaps in the literature that I thought, well, that needs to be covered a little bit, that needs to be explored a little bit. And then I wrote one chapter and another chapter and another chapter. And then I came back to it and said, look, mate, we've got a book here. We need to really, really focus on that, because part of the issue is that there's so little information and so I would have to say I hazard the argument to say there's so little research in the area.
Yeah.
One of the things I always come back to is that the term that they often use for Islamic insurance within Muslim society is Takaful.
Yep.
And the first thing I started asking, why do they call it Takaful? Because Takaful does not mean insurance in and of itself. Literally, it means solidarity of mutually working together to work towards a common pool. So it's more about, you can have a social solidarity, which is about Takaful Ijtimai. You could talk about family solidarity, is called Takaful Ahli. You have these different forms of solidarity. So in and of itself, Takaful means solidarity, working as a group. And the actual term for insurance that can be traced back to 700 of the Common Era is Tameen.
Yep.
So then I said, why do they use the term Takaful? And you got the perfectly good term Tameen. Because the word Tameen, stems from the Arabic root amana, which means security, which means trust. So that's a perfectly valid term.
Yeah.
And then you look at many insurance providers across the Gulf, in Arab-speaking countries, they use the term Tameen quite freely. You've got Tameen al-Siyara, car insurance, Tameen al-Haya, life insurance. So then from there I just said, well, there seems to be a disconnect between the English-speaking Muslim world and the Arab-speaking Muslim world. So.
Yes, I've noticed. Okay, so whether it's Takaful, whether it's Tameen, within Islamic insurance, the way Islamic insurance practitioners, they advocate for it is because there is an emphasis on this solidarity, or this communal solidarity between policyholders who are donating, a premium as such. Well, it's not, they don't call it a premium, but in substance, I would argue that it is. But they're donating a payment into a pool that would effectively be used to actually pay out whenever there's some type of adverse impact on the members of that pool, or members of that collective. Okay. In substance, I don't see how any of that is actually different to conventional insurance.
You're right. There isn't. I mean, it's probably an inappropriate term to use to say it's pretty much an old wine in a new bottle. It's essentially the spirit of insurance is something that is completely feasible within Islamic legal principles, and it can be traced back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, where the whole point about you got the Diyah system, which is essentially a tribal blood money system, is that if one member of the tribe causes harm to another member of the tribe, then the individual is not held responsible, the whole tribe is held responsible. So essentially, the tribe takes responsibility for the crime and pays compensation to the member of the other tribe. And this spirit of communal solidarity was something that was very much supported by the Prophet Muhammad, and says, well, we need to expand this a little further. This rule needs to be applied to all tribes. And that's where the Constitution of Medina came in. And then he didn't just extend it to somebody who commits manslaughter to another member of the tribe. He says that any form of injustice within society is society's fault. They need to be held responsible. And then his successor, Umar, who was the second caliph after Abu Bakr, he came and says, we're going to make this as part of statecraft. To say that, well, we're going to make a legitimate form of like administration where members of the cabinet and the army, they'll be paying, you could say donating, but they'll be paying a monthly fee within the treasury. And then if any sort of war, any injustice happens within society, they take it from the treasury and they eradicate that injustice. And this is where the welfare system came in. So it's very much part and parcel of that. And this spirit of having this common pool can be traced back to the advent of Islam. It just seems that when insurance first came into the Muslim world, we're talking about conventional insurance, it came in about the 19th century. They saw this as a foreign sort of financial instrument and say, well, that's their financial instruments, we've got our own financial instrument. And this point about anything that is outside of the Islamic State is seen as prohibited.
Yeah.
They did not actually analyze or did any research about what is this financial tool.
I think you have to also look at that sentiment that the community or the scholarly community had at that time, in through the lens of colonialism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So colonialism was seriously impacting a whole host of different Islamic regions and Muslim regions in that period. So there was a lot of usurping happening within the political structure, the social structure, the economic structure, and so forth. So to having a further encroachment into the domain of the sacred, okay, could be seen as, you know what, it's just one step too far, okay. And rightly or wrongly, they took that position. I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing right now. All I'm trying to get across is that reticence that the scholarly community had at that point was quite understandable. And also there was a language barrier. How many people would know French, German and English at that point? So to understand all of those concepts would be, you know, incredibly tough. The irony, however, was that on the other way round, in terms of Arabic text being translated into European languages, so that European scholars could actually understand what Islamic scholars were actually reading, or they themselves would learn Arabic to understand the Arabic text.
Yeah,
and I think that demonstrably had a significant impact on many of the
that broaches into another area of research that we're covering about Islamic endowments.
Correct.
Where this whole model of the trust in English and Welsh financial system, you can see there was a lot of borrowing from the Ottoman states, because you got the Waqf Ahli, which is the family endowments, and you find many of the financial experts within Britain, they saw what was going on within the Ottoman Empire and say that, well, we got these data that we can extrapolate and bring over to our financial systems and develop the financial trust within England. But you find this, I don't think it's anything unique, because it often is the case. They argue that the European financial and legal system seems to be translating Arabic texts into English. But I think this sense of intellectual, I want to say borrowing, but sort of like legacies going from one civilization to the next, it's not new. It's like you go from the Greeks to the Hindus, then from the what's called Arabic-speaking world, not necessarily all Muslim, and then it goes on to Europe. But to ignore that legacy is something that is counterintuitive to any academic, because what do they often say? That if you're an academic, if you're writing something, reference your work.
Exactly.
You always have to reference it.
Exactly.
So I think, if anything, there has to be some sort of like acknowledgement of where financial, legal principles, also forms of like philosophies, where do the origins come from?
I was in a conversation with somebody else earlier this week about that. I was talking about just, especially in this climate where we have increasing far-right nationalism, okay, and which is a huge shame, because the plurality of the UK, I think, is an incredible strength. And there has been not a single civilization that has become advanced or adept or successful without building on the advances and the progression of the previous communities that came before them.
Essentially standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it?
Exactly. So it's not a skin colour thing. It's not even a faith-based thing. It's not a cultural thing. Okay, it's not a nationalistic thing. All right. Humanity has made incredible achievements in so many areas of scientific, technological, philosophical progress, and we are all benefiting from that. I think that is not acknowledged enough. Didn't intend to go on a tangent, but on the matter of Islamic insurance, okay, just quickly on that, we are going to cover, we have covered, in fact, all of the arguments that have been made in relation to the prohibition of conventional insurance, okay? and also given counter arguments in relation to it, very strong counter arguments in respect to it. And the thing that I have to also acknowledge is that, especially for the sake of the viewers, when I've studied this particular subject for over a decade now, all right, when I've seen the arguments against insurance, they tend to have often come from places where those people articulating or maintaining a position that conventional insurance is forbidden, if they haven't actually understood the conventional insurance model or the conventional economic model.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency to be quite reductive, taking a very, very essentialist point of view to say that, well, you got insurance, where did it come from? It came from European thought, well, we want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of argument even among populist movements within the United States and in Europe to say that, well, this is part of the Muslim, what's called culture, as they want to call it, Islamic culture. We don't want anything to do with that. Without actually exploring further, going into it, say, well, what is it actually that's going on? And I think this is part of the problem where the scholarship among scholars of Islamic law, they, in the 19th century, got a Syrian scholar, Ibn Abidin. Insurance came to the Muslim world. And then, I need to double check if he's a Syrian scholar, came to the Muslim world, and then a lot of the scholars started to say, well, it came from the non-Muslim world, therefore it cannot be applied within the Islamic State. It can be applied outside the Islamic State, that's fine. Because if a Muslim was to establish a contract with, I don't like using the term non-Muslim, that's very, very, not very inclusive. I'd say that people from outside the Muslim state. If a Muslim was to go outside the Muslim state and establish a contract with people from other territories, that's valid. But that same contract, if it was drafted within an Islamic state, is invalid. So this is what a lot of the scholars during that time, they were very dismissive and said, well, the opinion has been declared in the 19th century. We don't need to revisit that. It was only up until the mid-20th century where you have some even conservative scholars who got curious to say, well, what is this insurance monarchy? What is all this? They want to actually explore what it is. And then when they looked at the substance of insurance, they were pretty much baffled to say, well, this is essentially very, very part and parcel of Islamic principle, is that the community get together, collect a common pool to mitigate risk. I say, well, this is pretty much very, very Islamic. The only criticism that they have of conventional insurance are those who provide funding for the common pool. So they say that the vehicle of insurance itself, the spirit of insurance, where somebody was to transfer their risk to the common pool, that's Islamic. But who provides the funds for the common pool? That's where the question mark comes in. To say that if an individual or a corporation was what's called indulging in activities are very un-Islamic, such as a gambling firm, or I don't want to broach there something that contributes to the state of Israel. You can even say that. Anything politically that is harming the Muslim community, they say that they cannot contribute to that pool. But they say the spirit of insurance in itself is very, very much acceptable.
Just on that BDS point that you just made here, that's actually not a filtration criteria when it comes to Sharia compliance. Okay? Not specifically anyway, but when it comes to filtration criteria for Islamic investing, okay, it does include a prohibition on weaponry, okay, but what you've alluded to is anything that goes towards the economic benefit of any nation state that is committing atrocities, genocide, and so forth. Okay, I think that's a very interesting point, and a valid point that I think all fund managers, investment managers need to actually be thinking about quite closely, because that would be undermining the very fabric of our societies if we are advocating things that ultimately compromise human life. okay, to that particular degree. It's something that I've thought about, and many clients have actually raised it to me. Okay,
It's
clients
something-
of different backgrounds.
It's something that we often
Yeah.
chat about in our spare time. I mean, one of the challenges I often face, I have a lot of, I mean, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to computers.
Yeah.
So often people come to me and say that we want a new laptop. I say, okay, that's fine. They say,
Yeah.
yeah, but we don't want Intel and we don't want AMD. And I say, well, what can you use? There's no other chip process. There's no chip production
Exactly.
manufacturers who provide that.
Exactly.
So why do you want that? I say, because they support. And I say, well, what can you do? Do you want me to build a computer?
But you know what? There's so many of these BDS lists now, right? And it becomes really confusing for people.
Yeah.
Okay. So Starbucks is on these lists, McDonald's is on this list,
Mm-hmm.
Coca-Cola is on this. Where do you stop, man? All right. But people also don't realize the broader context, the legal challenges or the political challenges that a lot of these companies are operating under.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes they can't divest
Mm-hmm.
because it will be illegal for them to actually divest
Mm-hmm.
from problematic countries, nation states, and so forth. So
Yeah.
there is that particular angle. Having said that, though, the best list that I've seen to date, which is in my opinion the most credible, would be the one by the UN. Okay, by UN Special Commissioner Francesca Berta. I can't remember her second name. Yeah,